Imagine being stranded with nothing but an endless supply of water. No food, no snacks, just water. How long could you survive? In today's video, we're diving deep into the science of starvation, water fasting, and the human body's incredible resilience. What happens to your body when you stop eating and rely only on water for survival? Let's find out. Welcome to Infinitia Verity, the channel where we uncover fascinating truths about science, history, and the mysteries of life. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell for more engaging and fact-filled videos. Now let's get into today's intriguing topic. Section 1. The Science of Starvation. How long can you survive without food? Your body responds to starvation in 3 phases. Phase 1. Glycogen depletion. In the first 24 hours without food, your body uses glycogen, a form of glucose stored in the liver and muscles, for energy. This keeps you energized for a short period. Fact 1. Glycogen is your body's fast energy source, but it only lasts around 24 to 48 hours. Fact 2. Athletes often carbo-load before events to maximize glycogen stores. Then Phase 2, fat adaptation or ketosis. After the glycogen is gone, the body enters a fat-burning mode called ketosis. It starts converting fat into fatty acids and ketone bodies, providing energy for several days to weeks. Fact 1. Ketosis is also a goal of the popular ketogenic diet aimed at weight loss. Fact 2. Ancient civilizations unknowingly used ketosis to survive during food shortages. Finally, Phase 3. Muscle breakdown. When fat stores deplete, your body starts breaking down muscles for energy. This is the most dangerous phase, leading to weakness, organ failure, and death if food is not reintroduced. Fact 1. At this point, survival becomes a race against time. Fact 2. Malnourished people, like prisoners of war or famine victims, experience severe muscle wasting known as cachexia. Section 2. Fasting versus starvation, a key difference. While starvation is involuntary, fasting is a controlled, voluntary process with specific health benefits when done properly. Many cultures and religions have practiced fasting for centuries, and modern science has backed some of these practices with research. Fact 1. Studies show that intermittent fasting can improve metabolic health, reduce inflammation, and promote longevity. Fact 2. Fasting induces autophagy, a process where cells clean out damaged components, reducing the risk of cancer and neurodegenerative diseases. Water fasting for several days, longer than 5 days, can lead to many of the same physiological responses as starvation. However, medical supervision is critical when engaging in prolonged fasts because the body eventually enters starvation mode. Section 3. The longest known survival cases without food. One of the most remarkable cases of surviving without food is Angus Barbieri's fast. In 1965, the 27-year-old man from Scotland fasted for 382 days under medical supervision, only consuming water, coffee, and vitamin supplements. Fact 1. Angus lost 276 pounds during his fast, but kept his health stable thanks to the medical oversight he received. Fact 2. This remains the longest medically documented fast in history. For millennia, religious fasting has been a widespread practice, whether in Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, or Buddhism. Some spiritual leaders fast for weeks, relying solely on water or minimal sustenance. Fact 1. Mahatma Gandhi famously fasted for 21 days during India's independence movement, surviving on water and small amounts of juice. Fact 2. Many modern religious fasts are shorter, but they still serve as a testament to the body's ability to adapt. Section 4. What happens to your body without food, a day-by-day breakdown. In the first 24 hours, as your body burns through its glycogen stores, you might feel hunger pangs and lightheadedness. Your energy will mainly come from glucose in your blood and liver. The hormone ghrelin, known as the hunger hormone, peaks during this period, making you feel constantly hungry. Most people can handle this phase without severe symptoms if they stay hydrated. By day 3 to 4, ketosis kicks in as the body switches to burning fat for energy. You might feel less hungry, but fatigue and irritability could start to set in. People who fast often report feeling more alert and focused around this time. The brain uses ketones as an alternative energy source during ketosis, which can reduce feelings of lethargy. By the second week, fat stores are being depleted, and the body starts using muscle tissue for energy. This leads to rapid weight loss and increased risk of organ failure. At this stage, people usually experience dizziness, fainting, and a drop in blood pressure. Death typically occurs between 45 to 65 days without food, depending on the individual's body composition and hydration levels. Section 5. Hydration, the key to survival. Water plays a crucial role in survival. While your body can last weeks without food, it can only survive 3 to 5 days without water. Staying hydrated allows the body to continue functioning even as it runs out of energy sources. Water is essential for regulating body temperature, aiding digestion, and supporting cellular function. Dehydration can cause delirium, organ failure, and death much faster than starvation. One of the dangers of prolonged fasting is electrolyte imbalance. Drinking only water without replenishing sodium, potassium, and other essential minerals can lead to dangerous conditions like hyponatremia, where sodium levels drop too low. Some fasting individuals take saltwater solutions or electrolyte supplements to avoid these imbalances. Symptoms of electrolyte imbalance include muscle cramps, confusion, and seizures. Section 6. Psychological effects of starvation and water-only diets. The psychological effects of prolonged starvation go beyond the physical. The brain is wired to ensure survival, so it constantly sends signals to seek out food, leading to intense cravings and even hallucinations about food. During World War II, the Minnesota Starvation Experiment revealed that volunteers began obsessing over food, even dreaming about it. The body's craving for calories can be so strong that some individuals become violent or irrational under extreme starvation. Surprisingly, during ketosis, some people report an increased sense of mental clarity and focus. This might be due to the brain's use of ketones instead of glucose. Many people who follow the ketogenic diet describe experiencing a keto high during this stage. Historically, monks and religious figures have noted heightened spiritual experiences during fasting. Section 7. Can you survive long enough to be rescued? When the body is reintroduced to food after long-term starvation, refeeding syndrome becomes a life-threatening risk. This condition occurs when the reintroduction of nutrients, especially carbohydrates, causes a dramatic shift in electrolytes and fluids, overloading the heart and other organs. Proper refeeding is a delicate process that must be done gradually, starting with liquids and progressing to solid foods. Fact 1. Survivors of long-term fasting or starvation are typically given glucose drips to stabilize their electrolyte levels before solid food. Fact 2. World War II concentration camp survivors often experienced refeeding syndrome, resulting in fatalities when food was provided too quickly. Section 8. Survival in extreme conditions. Historical examples. Throughout history, people have been forced into starvation during famines, wars, and other extreme conditions. The Great Irish Famine, which occurred between 1845 and 1852, resulted in mass starvation as crops failed and food supplies dwindled. During this period, millions of people survived on minimal sustenance, relying heavily on water for survival. Fact 1. During the Irish Famine, many survivors lived on meager diets of water and foraged plants like nettles and wild garlic. Fact 2. Starvation during the siege of Leningrad in World War II resulted in the deaths of over 1 million people, but some survived on water and small rations. Prisoners of war have faced extreme starvation, surviving for months on minimal rations. During World War II, Allied POWs in Japanese camps were fed little more than rice and water. Their bodies deteriorated over time, yet some managed to survive under these dire conditions. Additionally, political hunger strikes have been used as a form of protest throughout history. The longest hunger strike, lasting 116 days, was held by Irish Republican Bobby Sands in 1981. Sands consumed only water during this time, and though he died, his body held out for an astonishing amount of time. Fact 1. Irish hunger strikers often endured up to 60 days before succumbing to starvation. Fact 2. In some cases, force feeding was implemented to prevent death during hunger strikes, but this remains a controversial practice. Section 9. Scientific studies on long-term fasting and water-only diets. One of the most important studies on the effects of starvation was the Minnesota Starvation Experiment, conducted during World War II. Volunteers were put on a semi-starvation diet to better understand how the body responds to prolonged food deprivation. This study helped inform relief efforts after the war. providing insight into the best practices for refeeding famine victims. Fact 1. Volunteers in the Minnesota Starvation Experiment experienced severe psychological effects such as depression and obsession with food. Fact 2. After the experiment, the men took several months to regain their pre-starvation weight. Today, scientists continue to study the effects of water fasting and long-term calorie restriction. Some research suggests that short-term water fasting can improve metabolic markers, reduce inflammation, and even promote longevity in certain organisms. However, the long-term effects of prolonged fasting are still controversial, especially without medical supervision. Fact 1. A study published in found that short-term fasting may help regenerate immune cells by promoting autophagy. Fact 2. Another study revealed that water fasting could improve insulin sensitivity and reduce risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Section 10. What happens to the brain during starvation? So, during prolonged periods of starvation, the brain shifts its energy source from glucose to ketone bodies, which are derived from the breakdown of fat. This metabolic switch allows the brain to continue functioning even when food intake is severely limited. Although ketones are less efficient than glucose, they provide enough energy to keep cognitive functions running. Interestingly, the brain can get up to 75% of its energy from ketones during extended fasting. Some researchers suggest that this adaptation may have evolutionary benefits, allowing early humans to survive during periods of food scarcity. Despite the brain's ability to adapt, extended periods of starvation inevitably lead to cognitive decline. As muscle breakdown begins and essential nutrients are depleted, brain function deteriorates. In extreme cases, prolonged fasting can lead to confusion, hallucinations, and even coma. Severe malnutrition often leads to Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, a brain disorder caused by thiamine or vitamin B1 deficiency. Prisoners of war and famine survivors often report long-term memory and cognitive issues due to the effects of starvation. Section 11. The role of body fat and muscle in survival. Body fat acts as an energy reservoir, allowing the body to survive for longer periods during starvation. The more body fat a person has, the longer they can potentially survive without food. However, once fat stores are depleted, the body begins breaking down muscle tissue to maintain basic metabolic functions. On average, a person with 15 to 20% body fat can survive up to 60 days without food, as long as they remain hydrated. In cases of extreme obesity, some individuals have survived several months without food, relying solely on their fat reserves. While fat is the primary fuel source during starvation, muscle tissue is eventually broken down to provide amino acids for critical bodily functions. This process, known as muscle wasting or cachexia, leads to severe weakness and impaired organ function. Muscle breakdown occurs faster in individuals with low body fat as their fat stores are quickly depleted. Prolonged muscle wasting can lead to organ failure, particularly in the heart, which is a muscle itself. With Section 12. Can you survive on just water? Water is essential for life, but while it can sustain you longer than going without any sustenance at all, water alone is not enough to maintain long-term survival. After a few days without food, the body begins breaking down fat reserves to fuel its basic metabolic functions. While water fasting, where only water is consumed, has been promoted for short-term health benefits like detoxification and improved digestion, the body needs vital nutrients to survive over an extended period. The longest medically observed water fast lasted for 382 days, carried out by a Scottish man, Angus Barbieri, who survived by drinking only water and taking vitamins. While water fasting can help with short-term fat loss, it's not sustainable, as the body also requires essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids to function. Without essential nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, and proteins, long-term water-only diets can lead to severe malnutrition, organ failure, and even death. After fat reserves are depleted, muscle and organ tissues begin to break down, which weakens the heart, liver, and kidneys. Electrolyte imbalances from not consuming food can also cause cardiac arrhythmias, which can be fatal. Extended water fasting can cause electrolyte imbalances, leading to symptoms like dizziness, weakness, and in extreme cases, heart failure. Prolonged water-only diets may lead to hypokalemia or low potassium levels, which is dangerous for the heart. Section 13, Starvation and Psychological Effects. The psychological effects of starvation are profound and begin early during the fasting process. The brain relies heavily on glucose to function, so once this supply is cut off, cognitive decline sets in. Mental health is greatly impacted, with depression, anxiety, irritability, and obsessive behaviors related to food becoming prominent symptoms. In extreme cases, starvation can lead to hallucinations, paranoia, and psychosis. People in such dire circumstances often become fixated on food, dreaming about eating or hoarding small scraps of food. Fact 1. The Minnesota Starvation Experiment revealed that participants experienced severe psychological distress, including depression and preoccupation with thoughts of food. Fact 2. Starvation has been shown to cause permanent changes in brain structure and function, particularly in cases of childhood malnutrition. Hunger-induced behavioral changes include increased aggression, hoarding tendencies, and risk-taking. These behaviors are thought to be evolutionary mechanisms to encourage individuals to seek out food, even at the risk of personal harm. As starvation progresses, these tendencies may intensify, potentially leading to irrational or dangerous behavior. Fact 1. In famine conditions, communities often break down as individuals become increasingly focused on their own survival. Fact 2. Psychological resilience can sometimes mitigate the effects of starvation, with people in strong social networks or religious communities often faring better mentally than those isolated. Section 14. The recovery process after starvation. As mentioned earlier, refeeding syndrome is a significant concern after prolonged starvation. The sudden intake of carbohydrates causes an influx of insulin, which can lead to dangerous shifts in electrolytes like potassium, magnesium, and phosphorus. This can result in heart failure, respiratory failure, seizures, and even death. Fact 1. During World War II, many survivors of concentration camps in besieged cities died not from starvation but from improper refeeding after being rescued. Fact 2. Refeeding protocols now recommend starting with liquids, then gradually reintroducing solid foods over several days to weeks. Once the body is safely reintroduced to food, it begins to rebuild muscle and fat stores. This process is slow and requires a balanced intake of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. High-calorie diets are often prescribed to help rebuild lost body mass, but care must be taken to avoid overloading the digestive system. Fact 1. It can take several months to years for the body to fully recover from extreme starvation. Fact 2. Physical therapy is often required to rebuild muscle strength and restore mobility after prolonged periods of starvation. Section 15. Surviving on water alone: reality versus myth. While the idea of surviving on just water is captivating, it's important to understand that it is not a sustainable solution for long-term survival. The body's need for nutrients is vital, and without them, critical bodily functions will begin to shut down. While it is true that water can help stave off dehydration and extend survival for a time, eventually starvation will lead to organ failure, cognitive decline, and death. Section 16. Conclusion. Surviving without food for extended periods is possible, but the human body has clear limits. Water is essential to survival, but it cannot sustain life indefinitely without food. While the body has incredible mechanisms to adapt to starvation, including breaking down fat and muscle for energy, these processes can only extend survival for so long. The limits of human endurance in starvation are influenced by many factors, including body composition, environmental conditions, and the availability of water. Scientific studies and historical examples have shown that humans can survive weeks or even months in some cases without food, provided they have access to water. However, the longer a person goes without food, the more severe the physical and psychological effects become. In the end, the body requires a balanced intake of nutrients to sustain life, and while short-term fasting can have health benefits, long-term food deprivation is ultimately fatal. The key to survival is not just access to water, but also to food, medical care, and, when necessary, the careful management of refeeding to avoid complications. As always, knowledge is your greatest survival tool. Understanding how your body reacts to extreme conditions can make all the difference in life or death situations. So stay informed, stay prepared, and most importantly, never underestimate the value of proper nutrition and hydration in extreme survival scenarios. If you enjoyed this deep dive into human endurance, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Infinitia Verity for more fascinating facts and insights.